Hello, viewers of our Stop the Destruction of the World program. We are with you once again with this conscientization program as to the psychic and social causes related to the destruction of the world, of humanity, and civilization. The human being is psychically sick. He is not only causing illnesses in civilization, but also the planet, the animals, and vegetation, which is causing catastrophes. I would like to show you a number of slides that reveal the level of unbalance that our planet is already suffering. Take a look. This meteorological spectacle took place in Versoix, near Geneva, in Switzerland. Take lemon in the background. This is called a spectacle because it is very beautiful, because nature is beautiful. But on the other hand, this is a type of tragedy. And like Dr. Kepi always says, it seems that the human being does get a certain amount of satisfaction from seeing something destroyed. This has never happened to the planet, at least not to our knowledge. And if the human being destroys his environment, the climate, it's because it's what he is doing to himself internally with greater intensity. That is, what the human being does with his inside or his interior, he does with what is outside. These are the discoveries that Norberto Kepi accomplished in his work called Integral Psychoanalysis, or Analytical Trilogy. And this is why we believe that this situation related to the climate can't be reversed if we don't become conscientized of our internal problems.
Well, this depends a lot more on psychopathology, on the knowledge of psychopathology, and consequently, social pathology, which is what we have been revealing recently. I do not believe that in the entire world there is a science or a society of any kind that shows what is going on like we do, that the problem isn't on the outside. The problem is within the human being. That until the human being begins to see that he is against life, against health, against goodness, against the animals, the vegetation, and even against God, can you see it? That when he was created, he said, "No, I want to have the freedom to go against the Creator." And this is, in fact, what he is doing. He is going against his Creator. And so he is going against all the good that he has, because everything that is good comes from the Creator. Let's see now something of our work by way of this slide I'd like to show you.
Psychotherapy makes one conscious. First, the human being's strong opposition towards goodness.
So anyone who has any type of illness, any type of social difficulty, anguish, depression, phobias, you can be rest assured that he has this because he isn't happy with the life he has. I normally comment with my patients, even those who don't have a lot of money, if they aren't content with life, even if it's a more or less getting along existence, it's because they are ungrateful. It's what Melanie Klein called ungratefulness, because deep down, due to envy, the human being combats everything that he has received for free. The food that grows, the means to earning a living, life itself, which is already a miraculous thing. Because, just think, 100 years ago, we simply didn't exist. So if one day we came to be, it's because we received this incredible present from the Creator. And it's exactly this that we throw away. So, referring back to the slide now, let's see the second one.
Illness is the result of not wanting to see one's ill doings.
Freud showed that the unconscious stores up the human being's erroneous attitudes, but he spoke more in terms of indecent attitudes. He was very much linked to the issue of sexual pathology. If that were the basic problem, it would be very easy to resolve. But he lived during the Romantic period in Vienna, and there was a lot of hysteria taking place at that time. In the beginning, he treated mostly women, people who were more hysterical. So he thought that the problem was linked to sexual repression. But just notice how countries that have more freedom in this sense have the sickest people. So the issue is, the human being doesn't want to see that he rejects goodness, rejects God, rejects health. And until the human being begins to see that his illness is caused by this, he'll continue to create illness. It's not that he wants to become sick, but he doesn't want what is good. He wants illness because by being ill, he is antagonized with life and with goodness. If the human being accepts life, he is going to be so happy, like animals in the forests are content, far from mankind. Referring back to the slide.
Psychotherapy makes one conscious of the person's neurotic attitude. Observation. It's fundamental to see that a neurotic conduct is prejudicial to its author.
Consider well. I mention this because if the human being at least sees that it is he who is ruining everything, that he ruins his own life, if the human being is unhappy, he is unhappy because of what? Sometimes it's because he doesn't have as much money as he would like to have. Or he is unhappy because he wants to see something but he can't for some reason or another. Or because something happened at home. So the human being arranges a life of anguish for himself based in secondary things. And a fundamental issue, which is exactly the good that he has, he just doesn't want to pay attention to this. Let's see a sentence now, steeped in philosophical thought.
Any type of evil proves the existence of goodness, because it is simply its absence.
If you pay attention, you will notice that the evil that the human being has only exists when he says no to health. Evil only exists when we put goodness and health aside, when we put health aside, when we put happiness aside. If the human being stopped feeding sorrow, stopped feeding sadness, he would be a very content being. He would simply be happy. So, in this next slide, let's see what would be the way to sanity.
The route to sanity: accept life as it is.
And what then is important? It's that the maximum that the human being can have is life itself. Now, with the life that he has, if he goes against it, if it's not what he thinks it should be, or if it doesn't have something that he wants, unsatisfied for one reason or another, how can he be happy if he rejects what he is? It's a question of logic even. The human being normally rejects himself. He doesn't want to live as he is and with what he has. Let's see now the second one.
The route to sanity is to accept one's own errors.
And the number 3.
It's to accept seeing errors in others.
So the great work that Freud initiated, a fantastic work, which in German is called Tiefenpsychologie, that is, psychology of the depths, the base, of the roots, because the other forms were more that of counseling, of pedagogy. Even the religious aspect was that of counseling. It shouldn't be like that. It's better not to do this. Do it this way, then do it like that. So this just doesn't work. And why not? If, for example, a child makes a deformed work of art of some kind, and the parents, instead of saying, "Look, you can't do that," they just let it go. So the child does even worse things. Why? Because he gets pleasure out of it. And the human being continues to do this throughout his life, just making a mess of things. Notice that by the time one becomes a teenager, especially during the teenage years, a person will form what he's going to do for the rest of his life. What he was up until 21 years of age is what he'll be for the rest of his life. If he was a constantly stubborn, awful person, only with great difficulty will he be able to change that. If he fights about everything at home with the family, then he's going to fight at school, and later he'll do the same at work, and for the rest of his life. Now, if he was a compliant person, calm and receptive, then he's going to be like that throughout his life. Another important factor. If he works as a youngster, if he dedicates himself to some activity, not in the sense of earning a living, obviously, not to support himself, but if he is dedicated to some type of action, then he is going to be active throughout his life. He's going to be enterprising. He's going to do something with his life. If up to 21 years of age he has never done anything other than study, then he is never going to work afterwards, at least not in the way he should. It's important for educators to perceive this, politicians too, so that they don't create laws that inhibit people with less than 21 years old from working. Now, of course, it's obviously not to oblige children to support themselves, but at least have some activity to do with their father or mother, something practical, do you see? To develop a love for action, like dedicating themselves even to a hobby that they like. And the last one, number 4.
Never take a step that's too big for one's stride. Observation. If the human being sees himself and his manifestations as being inferior to life, then this is the real route to sanity.
To be grateful for the life that he has. Because if he doesn't accept it, and generally people have everything they could want, but how is he going to be happy if he has everything and doesn't accept what he has? We'll be right back.
The most original contemporaneous writer in the world today, says the National Scientific Research Center in France. A genuine contributor to the intellectual treasury of civilization, says former U.S. Ambassador Joseph Gogassian. For these times of uncertainty and conflict comes a work of extraordinary vision, hope, and moral clarity. Brazilian psychoanalyst and social scientist Norberto Keppe writes with wisdom and authority about the things that really matter. How to heal illness, how inverted science is leading the destruction of nature, and what to do about it. Finding spirituality within, structuring a truly just society. There are more than 3,000 books published worldwide every day. None are more important than these. The books of Norberto Keppe, Trilogical Science, leading us to a new world.
Dr. Kepi, in the last segment, you talked about how important it is for the human being's sanity and for the planet, for him to see his mistakes. So one of the main medias that we use to divulge this conscientization is precisely TV. Our television programs are not only educational, but therapeutic. Nevertheless, not all television programs have this goal. Some programs are highly appreciated by the population because of their neurotic and destructive components that generate neurosis and alienation, because on many occasions they feed this impulse, attitude, and destructive desire that the human being has. Aggressiveness, violence, and on many occasions dishonesty, futility, and superficiality. We have a short interview with a specialist on how the wrong usage of television can influence people's lives and be very prejudicial. Let's take a look.
Em relação à destruição do mundo, nós temos que entender que existe uma destruição subreptícia sendo feita pela televisão, pelo videogame e pelo computador, principalmente com crianças. Por exemplo, um dos últimos artigos mais recentes provava estatisticamente que jovens que assistem mais televisão começam a vida sexual mais cedo. O videogame é muito pior, porque além da imagem existe a ação. E a maior parte dos videogames jogados por crianças e jovens, mas de longe a maior parte se constitui de videogames violentos. E isso já está mais do que provado que induz a agressividade, que pode ser verbal, pode ser empurrar um colega, pode ser bater em outro, e até a violência realmente é induzida por esses jogos. É uma destruição mental, e é por isso que pouca gente está consciente dela.
So, Dr. Kepi, you see how the issue of television is an issue of how it is used, correct? Television can be an instrument of great conscientization utility for the human being, or it can be at the service of man's pathology, like any other method or institution or technology.
And this is why most people who watch a lot of television are in a kind of constant drowsy state, out of touch with reality. I would like to show you some ideas from a historical standpoint of how scientists see the etiology of illnesses. Let's see the slide.
Etiology of illnesses. First, Anton Mesmer, an Austrian doctor who brought up the issue of erroneous energies.
He wasn't able to develop this very much because he lived just over 100 years ago, and in those days the entire ambient was dominated by medicine. Corporal organicist medicine, as we know it, which is derived from alchemy, which sought after a magic potion to cure people. And let's see the second one. Jean-Martin Charcot, a French doctor who perceived that the origin of illnesses was hereditary and organic. Well, as it is written here, in France at that time, as in the whole of Europe, they always focused on the organicist, corporal aspect. And the next one, Sigmund Freud.
Sigmund Freud, who was a Jewish Austrian doctor, saw the cause of illnesses linked to sexual frustration.
You see here that he took a step forward because he considered not only the corporal aspect, but the affectionate aspect as well. And then Jung.
Carl Gustav Jung, a Swiss doctor, spoke of the collective unconscious.
And he believed also more in the hereditary aspect, but not in the organic corporal sense, in the psychological sense, through Hindu mandalas, designs linked to Oriental philosophy. And look now at what Viktor Frankl talked about.
Viktor Frankl was a Jewish Austrian doctor who spoke about the lack of responsibility, and what I would add, in the sense of life.
Exactly. And the next, Count Igor Caruso,
who was a Russian psychologist who talked about absolute relativization.
He also spoke about the absolutization of the relative. It's a philosophical phrase, and we can consider the following in relation to this phrase. In the question of creation, many ask, before the world was created, was God alone? Look at what a tricky question. How does one solve this? It's that God doesn't live within time and space. Therefore, time and space don't exist for the divine being, because everything is simultaneous for him. Things that were 1 billion years ago are a moment. For him, the past and the present are together, everything at the same instance. So God was never alone. We are his children, and he has always been with his children, with us. And then we have one more person. Let's see who it is.
Norberto Keppe, a German-Austrian-Brazilian psychologist who talks about inversion or denial of the being as being the cause for the main illnesses.
This denial of being is the denial of an immortal being, as we've been created to be. We are immortal by nature, but when the human being denies this, he falls into a mortal state. That is, he physically perishes.
Dr. Keppe, I would like to point out that this idea that you brought up, the great majority of the authors are of the Germanic thinkers.
Yes, of Central Europe. Let's now consider this important sentence.
It's not related to acting within goodness, but goodness is the action.
You see here, there's a rethinking of thought going on here, because many think that the human being is going to do good when he wants to, instead of seeing that goodness has to be his very life, do you see? The good, true goodness, is action. Acting, let's say, in pure act, the individual is doing what is his very being, which is goodness, beauty, and truth. Let's see now, based on our studies, what are the main causes of illness?
Theomania and megalomania. First, psychiatry began with the discovery that Kraepelin related to grandiose mania.
So Kraepelin practically started psychiatry at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th by seeing that people became sick, not only due to organic corporal issues, which is a consequence, but due to the psychological issue of megalomania. And let's see the second one.
This is the reason why the human being wants to take the Creator's place and be a god.
This one is self-evident. And number 3.
Man suffers because he has become an enemy of the Creator.
And fourth.
Those who are arrogant are also dominated by others who are arrogant. The worst illnesses are provoked by theomania, schizophrenia, paranoia, depression, manias, obsessions, catatonia, and all types of psychopathic and psychopathology.
So following this, I'd like to mention a very important author. Let's see who it is.
Bernardo of Claraval.
Did you know that he was a theologian, a religious individual? I've always said that to save humanity, theology has to be placed in all of humanity. Theology is the human being's life and can't be closed within the walls of just some groups, because the human being is either theological, that is, linked to goodness, or he perishes. So look at what Bernard of Claraval wrote.
Without humility, there is no wisdom.
And what did he mean by this? If the human being isn't humble, if he doesn't put himself into a humble position in the face of goodness, in the face of the hugeness of the world, then he can't be wise. He won't even know things of a simpler nature. And the second one,
Recognition of one's own misery is the route to goodness.
only the humble people are the ones who know their own misery and the misery of the world. And in third place,
Reason should be subordinate to faith. Bernardo of Caraval was a great psychopathologist.
and what do I mean by this? Normally, theologians know a lot more about psychopathology. They are psychopathologists. They know much more about the problematic things of humanity than present-day scientists do. So, for the world to be able to be saved and stop all this destruction in the world, the human being has to include theology in his life. And not to think that it's only a cult thing for the weekends or going to Mass. That's not it. It's something within. It's inside each one of us. And now I'd like us to contemplate this last sentence.
If a person isn't within goodness, then he isn't with God.
This sentence is self-evident, isn't it?
So we will be back next time with our Stop the Destruction of the World program. See you then.